everyone, my name is Lori, my nickname is Weenie, and I'd like to welcome you to Renewable Beanie Creations. If this is the first time you've popped by to check out my channel, a special welcome to you. I hope you like what you see. If you do, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing and sharing with your fellow crafters. For all of my subscribers and those of you who are back, a very special welcome to you. I really am happy you're back to see me again, and please don't forget to hit that thumbs up. It really does help us out here on our YouTube channels. So today, still with Easter in mind, we're going to make a bit of a sign, and this is it. And this is just going to go on my front porch. It's very easy to do. Again, dollar store stuff, so inexpensive. This is a board I just had laying around. And so let me stop yakking at you and we'll get on crafting. So for this Easter craft, we're going to start. I bought this little plastic egg at the dollar store. I think I paid maybe $1 for it. And I don't even know why I bought it at the time. I knew I'd come up with a use for it and have. So they still have them. I think they have other patterns and stuff there. At least they did when I picked this one up. And then I've just got this piece of wood. And this was just a scrap. You can go to your local, and don't worry about edges and that sort of thing. We'll sort those out after. So I'm just going to place this so it's just part way off the thing, off the board here. And then I'm going to trace around it with just a pencil. So now, I don't know if you can see that line, but there is a definite line on there. So we're going to put that aside for the moment. And then I've got these Easter paints. I've got and these are just acrylic. So just a mint green, the pink one, this is a lavender, and just a yellow. So what I'm going to do is just start painting lines of it within the egg. Don't worry too much if you go over, because we will be cleaning that up, but just within inside the egg and in no particular order. No, they don't have to be definite lines. You'll see what I mean. All right, so there's all of our colors. I'm just gonna take a paintbrush, take off most of my water, and I'm just gonna start brushing in. I'm not going to intentionally go over, just keep things tidy, but it doesn't really matter if you do, because it will be all hidden. And if we have to do a couple of coats, that's fine too. And they can sort of, you want them to touch, because you definitely don't want to see the wood underneath, but they can even sort of overlap a little bit. They don't have to be straight. I'm sure you can see what I'm saying here. Mine are not perfectly straight, and that's okay. You can do them as wide or as narrow as you wish. So yeah, we're just going to continue that down. Definitely going to need 2 coats, maybe even 3. So when I've got it all filled in and painted, we'll be back to the next step. Okay guys, so I kind of lost some footage. I must have hit stop instead of play or something, because it's just gone. But so the next step you do, and you can see I've kind of already done it, is I place it over top, and then I just used a white spray paint. I didn't tape this down or anything. It's heavy enough that it just sort of stays. So this is the spray paint I used, but you can use whatever you've got. The dollar store one would work fine too. It's just what I had on hand, so I went ahead and sprayed it and let it dry. I think I did 2, maybe 3 coats to get the coverage I wanted, and now we can move on to the next step. So you should be left with something that looks similar to this. You can see my coverage over here isn't great, but that's okay because what we're doing next, you'll see. So we're just going to play a little bit here. So I've got this light blue, and I'm going to use a white, and well, I'm going to use a white and black because apparently I don't have gray paint at the moment, but put some white. A little white over here. I'm just going to add the smidge of black to make a gray for me. And when you are adding a dark color to a light color, you don't need very much. If you're just trying to get a light hue. You can always add more, but you can't take it back out. So start small and add to it. Yeah, so that's going to be just about what I want. So now, I'm just going to kind of just clean that off. I'll do that. And now I have a sponge, and it's just a plain old sponge. I just cut them into cubes. I'm going to get it wet and rinse it off. And then I'm just going to start to pounce. And we will add, let's not do that. Kind of like to give us a skyline, I guess. Kind of like for the background. Okay, so now that we've kind of got it pounced, but it's still wet, we're just going to take a rough brush. This is actually a basting brush that I use for this. And I'm just going to lightly drag it over. And then we'll go back to our pouncing. Now you can leave it with just the pouncing if you want to, but I wanted it to have more of sort of a softer, cloudy kind of a feel. So we're all dry now, so now we're going to go on to the next step here. And I think daffodils are very Easter, they're very spring, I really, really like them. So we're going to do some daffodils. Now you don't have to be a good painter, whatever, to do this. I'm going to show you how. And you'll find that it is a lot easier than you will have expected. Now one of the things I like to do if I'm using, so I want a darker yellow and a lighter yellow, but I do want them to be compatible, is rather than find 2 yellows, I'll just add some to the white, and that way you stay in the same palette. I can see my paints are running together here. That's not what I had in mind. Okay, so I got the yellow, and then I just added some to the white, and we'll just give it a bit of a stir. And we may need to add a little more, which is fine. That's probably just about right. All right, so this is just from the dollar store. It works just fine. My white is as well. I am a tool painter, so I have accumulated a ton of paint over the years, so just see what you got in your stash and what works for you. So to start, we're going to just sketch out just a very, very simple pattern for our daffodil. Again, you don't have to be a great painter for this. I assure you I am not a good pencil drawer, but I paint way better than I draw. But we're just gonna kind of sketch out very lightly. Daffodil pattern. We're definitely not going for perfection here. Then we're going to take our darker color and this brush on. I'm going to do the center in the darker. You can do it whichever way you like. Now, yellow is one of those colors that you're probably going to need to do several coats. Something about yellow just doesn't give the coverage. Even white does better coverage than yellow. So you will have to do 2 to 3 coats. All right, so once I've kind of got it outlined, I will give it the frilly edge. Maybe do that with my other brush. So I always like to outline mine first, just so I kind of have an idea where I'm going, and then I'll use the bigger brush to fill it in. So now you can do the frilly edge however you want with whatever paintbrush you like. We're not going for perfection here, as I said. Okay, so once that part's done, I hope you can see that okay, and we're going to make that stand out better later. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom part, but I'm going to use the lighter yellow on that. I'm going to go ahead and decide where I want my second one. I think I'm just going to do kind of 3 in a row. I just wanted an idea of the space and size. So I'm going to do my next one kind of the same, just maybe a bit smaller. Alright, so we've got a couple of coats on there. Now the coverage isn't 100% yet. That's okay, because the next step we're going to do is really going to make this come alive. And you're going to, if you don't already do this, if this is new to you, it's something that you can incorporate in everything. It's probably my most used technique for sure. So we're going to highlight and shade. So to do the shading, the darker one, I'm going to use an orange on the bright, and on the pale, we're going to use the yellow we used on the top. So I'm going to start, different painters tell you different things. Some of them say, oh, you should always highlight first. It depends what I'm doing, to be honest. Sometimes I want to see the shading first because it will help me with the highlighting. The other thing they say, and I'm not going to be too worried about it with this particular project, is to always think of which side the sun is coming on. So I'll think about it a little bit, but it won't be my primary concern. But I always, just for my own sake, so I always remember, I always assume the sun is coming this way. And just think where your shadows and stuff would lie in that scenario. Now, like I said, for this project, I'm not going to be too fussy about it. I'll think about it a little bit, but it's more the technique we're concerned with here. So what you're going to need, of course, like the paints I mentioned. Now you can use wax paper, you can buy the books of them. I don't know why you would, it would be too expensive, but I like using these little page protectors. It works just fine. You can always wipe them down after and even reuse them. And then your brush needs to be, oh, there it is. It doesn't necessarily need to have the angle like this one, but it does need to be flat. If you have the angle, that's handy, but you can do it without. Because I do have the angled one, I'm going to keep it. Now you can get these, I got this brush at the dollar store. So the first thing we're going to do, I have chosen to do the shading. So you don't want to put all of your brush in the paint. So the other thing I do, because you want to pick up a little bit, is I take, let's see if I can show you this better. I stick the end of my paintbrush in my water and I splatter it. So when I need to pick up a little water, you'll see why. Then I've got it there and I don't have to redo my brush every time. So you're going to take the side and just tip it in like that. Then you're going to take your wax paper, your acetate would work, anything like that, and you're going to walk it out. And I have way too much water on that brush. I don't think I remembered to dry it. Let's try that again. Okay, take the water off of your brush. Now I could just go in, but I want to show you. So you're going to pick up some paint on the corner of your brush and walk it out. That's much better. Now you'll see that the paint starts to sort of break up along the edge. And when it gets to that point, that's about where you want it. So in a daffodil, the shadow is going to be at the bottom. So I'm not just going to do a straight line. I'm sort of going to bring it down and around. Now I do want a little more water. I want it to blend better. So this is where this comes in. You just pick up a little bit of water and you can bring it around again. On this side, because as I said, I wasn't going to be too concerned, but it is a thing, I'm going to go up higher because if our sun is coming this way, this is the side that would be more shaded. So I'm going to go all the way up. Just like that. Right, so we're going to do that to all three. Now, if you want yours a little more bold, I tend to like it a little more bold. Once it dries, go in and do another coat. This is also where we're going to worry about the ridges. So I'm going to just make sure my brush isn't too wet. I'm going to pick up a little bit more paint, just a smidge of the water. I'm going to go back into the paint that's already there, walk it in, and then walk it back out again. And the ridge, if you were to see it, the shadow would be inside. So we will do the highlighting, as you'll see. I'm going to pick a spot that I think it would be, and I'm going to give it its ridges. Just like that. Now we'll come back and highlight it, and you'll see now I do want it blend again to blend a bit better. So I just go in with a little more water and go right back over top of it. When that's dry, we're going to come and do the other side, but we don't want to do it while it's wet or it'll wash it off. So now I have enough paint on my thing. We're just going to pick up a little bit more water and do the same thing. Walk it in and then walk it back out. And we will do our next one. So we're going to use the yellow and we're going to do these leaves. Now I think I'm going to go all the way around on them just to really define them. Let's see how we do here. I'm going to go underneath because there would be shadow there. Put some water. Too much. Okay, so now we're going to highlight. And I will do some more touching up of these guys after. But to highlight, you're going to do the same thing, but lighter color. So we're going to go with white. And we're going to do the same technique. Take your brush, and lock it in, and then lock it back out. And now, because this is the underside, we are going to go underneath. It's too much. Let's get some of that off. And we're just going to do that with all of them here. Same with the leaves. We're going to go on the other side. Of our leaves. Okay, so that's sort of shaded and highlighted. I've done it a little bolder than I normally would because I really wanted you to be able to see it on camera here. So the last step that really makes a difference is called a dry brush. There's different kinds of dry brushing, but for this one, if you don't have one, find a brush that's quite stiff and cut it down as short as you can. And you want it to be very hard. Okay, so then what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go with the light first. We're gonna add some dark after, but I'm just gonna stick it in. Now you don't wanna get this brush wet right away. You can obviously need it to clean it off, but we're gonna go with a dry brush, that's the name. We are going to take as much of that paint off as we can. Now you do wanna wait till your painting's pretty dry to go to the next step, otherwise it'll pull some of the paint off. Again, we can always fix that. So I'm going to give it some depth and I'm just going to rub back and forth. Now I will tell you this may be a little bit hard to see on camera, but when you do it yourself you'll see the difference. So I'm just rubbing to give it some dimension. I'm going to give it a little more because I'm thinking you probably can't see that. So I'm going to wipe off most of it again. And that's just kind of going to give it some shape, some dimension. I'm not sure if you can see it on here, but if you're trying this at home, you will see it for sure then. And then just so I can show you, we're going to do more of the shading. So this time I've taken off as much paint as I can. Now we're going to go into our darker color. Again, we're going to take off as much of the paint as we can. And then we're just going to go in here. Alright, so you should be left with something that looks like that. Again, I did mine a bit bolder than I maybe normally would just to make sure it really showed up on camera for you. So now we just need to do our leaves, and then we'll put our sign up here after. But to do your leaves, that same, no, not that one. Not that one either. So I'm going to use a couple of brushes. I'm going to use this to kind of do the stem and then this one for the leaves. And this is a bit of a technique, but again, it's not difficult at all. So we'll start with this one because we need our stems to pull our leaves off of. So we will, of course, wet our brush, take off the excess. Just a little trick. Watch that you don't get drips up here because nothing ticks me off more than I'm painting and it runs down and wrecks your paint. Just a tip. So you're going to dip your paint in the brush. You're going to sort of twirl it and pull it out. And kind of decide where you'd like it to come from. And just pull it. And use like not just the tip. So you're going to start with the tip. And then add more pressure and just pull it down. Now when we want to extend it, because obviously we don't have enough paint on a brush this size to do the whole stem, you're not going to start right where you ended off. Paint's drying out a bit here. You're going to start part way up. And that gives you a clean sort of line. So it doesn't look like it started and stopped. That makes sense. Okay, so now we're going to just decide kind of how you want them. If you want them to go to the bottom, you can do that. All right, so now we've got our stems. So we're going to want to give them some leaves, and that's where this brush comes in. So we're going to wet our brush. And you can see I have the two colors of green, a lighter one and a darker one, and I'm going to set my brush so it goes halfway in between them. So then you're going to lay it flat, and as you pull up, you're just going to twist. And I may get a little bit more contrast. I actually quite like that, but I'm not sure it's going to show. So let me get some better contrast here. All right, that's probably going to do a little bit better. You'll be able to see it better. So again, we're going to take our brush. Oops, let me get that. Now, if your paints are not together like mine are, say you're doing a different project, you can grab one this way and get them from both. But because of what I'm doing, so I got the two paints. We'll start on our center. And as we move up, we're just going to twist. And that's going to give you sort of that variegated two-tone kind of a thing. Do it again. And I keep quite a bit of paint on my brush when I do this. I know some people like to take it off. Again, personal preference. Let's start at the base. Pull and twist. I'm not going to do too many on here. We'll do one more. So there's our little daffodils. I think it's very springish. So we're just going to make a happy Easter sign to go up here, and then we'll take care of the edges. So I'll be back to you here shortly. So there's our happy Easter stencil. Now, I've said this before, I do have a Cricut, so I go ahead and use my Cricut. If you have one, I'm going to assume you already know how to do this part of it. If you don't, there are so many great tutorials on YouTube. I'm not going to do a better job than what you can find there. That's how I learned, so go ahead and do that. If not, you can print something off on the printer and trace around it and just paint it out. You can create your own stencil just with a printer and like an X-Acto knife and cut out your letters, or of course you can always go get one at the dollar store, Michael's, any of those. The other alternative would be to get the sticker letters. or even the wooden letters and glue them on as well. That would be kind of a cool look as well. So there's a ton of ways to do this. So I'm not going to get into how I made the stencil. As I said, there's tutorials that are just amazing on how to do that if you do have a Cricut. But what I am going to do is, so we're going back to our sponge. I'm going to use the same 4 colors we used in our Easter egg. Stay. Oh, where's my green? There. So we're going to use those, and I'm just going to do my letters in those. And I'm a little bit concerned my paper got a bit smushed. So I've used a double-sided tape for the middle bits and all of that to try and keep them in place. So I really hope they do. If not, I shall take a paintbrush and clean them up. But we're going to hope that this works. Now, unfortunately, I have misplaced my original palette, so I'm going to just use a lid. Just a lid. It already has some paint in it from another project, but just a lid. So I'm just going to start with the pink. Doesn't really matter which one you start with. And I'm going to take, I don't want it to be sloppy or it will go underneath for sure. And being that I'm a little bit concerned about it. Now this one is lightly damp. You can't squeeze anything else out of it, but it is lightly damp. That's how you want it. So I'm going to put the paint on my sponge, and then using my paper towel, I'm going to take most of it off so it's not sloppy. Then we're just going to pounce it. Okay, so here is the moment of truth to see how we did. Okay, so that's our happy Easter sign. Now, I am going to go around the letters with a fine paintbrush, just to highlight them just that little bit more. If yours came out clean and bright enough, you can totally skip that step. But I'm just going to go around them just to make them stand out a bit more. It is going to be a sign for me for outside, so I do want it to show, to really show up. So here's our sign kind of all done, except I'm going to edge it. Now you could totally stop here, especially if your edges are nice. Mine weren't. I just used what I had around. So I'm going to put the rope around it. You can use the dollar store nautical rope. I just got a roll of this at a thrift store at some point, and I use it all the time, so that's what I'm using. But you can use anything you want. You could use ribbon for that matter. So I'm going to start down in the corner because I am going to put something here to hide our ends. So I'm going to start there. Again, it's completely up to you where you want to start and how you want yours to look, but this is just because I'm going to put a bow or something here in the corner that will hide the ends. I did have to, on my rope, melt the ends. So depending on your rope, you might just need to take a lighter and give it a quick melt so they don't unravel. Okay, so now we've got it all edged. And the final step is I've got this ribbon. This one actually did come from Michael's. They have buy one, get one free. But I did see they had similar stuff at the dollar store. But because of the sale at Michael's, I went ahead and bought this roll. So, I'm going to decide about how big I want it. So then I'm just going to fold it in on itself. Now, Olivia's, I think it's called Olivia's Romantic Home. She makes the most phenomenal bows. So if you need a good tutorial for bow making, I would go check her channel out for sure. I'm just going to fold it in over on itself. I'm going to give myself a little extra because I'm thinking I'm going to dovetail this one. And then just with a pipe cleaner. Oh, I got this kind of the wrong way. I'm just going to change it up just a bit here. So I can have one on each end. There we go. So I'm going to keep my tails out. Now there was a couple ways to do it where you can do the whole bow and then make some additional tails, but because I don't want it too big, I'm going to go with this. I don't need that whole pipe cleaner. I'm going to cut it in half. Great. I'm going to kind of fluff my bow out here a bit. We shall dovetail it. Turn off my tails of that too here, I think. Yeah. And then I'm going to do the bow in the corner like this. Just a bead of glue here. And now I got this little egg that was just in my stash. Oops. That took a dive. And just to finish it off, I think I'm gonna tuck my egg in right there. And so that's our little happy Easter sign. Now you can, of course, put a hanger on the back if you want to hang it somewhere. Or I'm going to put mine outside on my front porch, and I'm just sort of leaning mine up against a planter that I have. Unfortunately, I can't show you that yet because I live in Alberta and we still have snow and it's not nice out there just now. So, but I'm just leaning it up, but you could also just screw a stake to the back and push it into a planter, or, I mean, there's 1,000 different ways you could display it, I'm sure, but this one I'm just going to be leaning up against a planter that I'm going to decorate for the season. So this is where I am done. So I will take some better pictures of the finished product. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I see you again.